Fencing in the Philippines was introduced in the 1930s by Don Francisco Dairit Sr., now known as the father of the Philippine fencing. In 1957, he led the establishment of the Philippine Fencing Association. Don Francisco is the father of then Philippine Olympic Committee President Celso Dairit, who also served for 15 years as president of the Fencing Confederation of Asia.
Good morning, everyone! I am Princess J. Caramos, your host for today's episode. The Philippine Sports Commission celebrates with the Filipino nation the birthday of our dear national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal. A sportsman who loved to play martial arts, especially fencing, Dr. Jose Rizal was born on June 19. And yes, that's about 160 years ago today. Well, that was a long time ago, but the memories of our dear hero continues to inspire us young people and every Filipino to always rekindle and keep aflame the highest sense of nationalism and patriotism. In a paper presented in 2009 in the International Conference of Southeast Asian Historians, Dr. Esteban de Ocampo claimed that Dr. Jose Rizal is the father of Filipino nationalism for several reasons. Dr. Rizal has been ranked by biographers, both Filipinos and foreigners, as one of the great intellectual leaders of Asia, together with Mahatma Gandhi of India and Dr. Sun Yat-sen of China. Dr. Rizal was the organizer of the International Association of Filipinos in Europe in 1889, among his many historical commemorations. And of course, that includes his passion for fencing. Because of that, today's episode marks a special tribute to him by featuring the sport that he loves, the sport that requires special skills of swordsmanship.
This picture shows Jose Rizal's sword fight with Juan Luna, a Filipino painter, sculptor, and a political activist of the Philippine Revolution during the late 19th century. Another proof of his fencing passion is this picture showing Jose Rizal with a sword when he was studying in Madrid. He was practicing fencing with the Paterno brothers, Pedro, Maximo, and Antonio. Jose Rizal was 18 years old when he wrote a letter to Enrique Lete, dated November 27, 1879, saying, and I quote, "My hands are shaking because I have just had a fencing bout. You know, I want to be a swordsman."
And now, because it is the birthday of this fencer, the Philippine Sports Commission Women in Sports is here in Calamba, Laguna. And right here behind me is the house where he was born in 1861. Welcome to the Museo ni Jose Rizal. This house is a reproduction of the original two-story Spanish colonial style house of the family. And before we'll have a quick tour inside Dr. Jose Rizal's home, let me introduce to you the Senior Shrine Curator of Museo ni Jose Rizal, Zarah Escueta.
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat at kayo po ngayon ay nandito sa Museo ni Jose Rizal, Calamba. Ako po si Zarah Escueta, ang Museum Curator nito. Ito po ang dating tahanan ng ating pambansang bayani at ito ay isang replica house ng original na bahay. Ang bahay na ito ay tinayo 2 taon bago ipanganak si Dr. Jose Rizal. Ipinanganak siya noong June 19, 1861. Ang bahay na ito ay tinatawag na bahay na bato, yari sa adobe at sa matitibay na kahoy gaya ng nara, maulawin, at iba pang matitibay na kahoy galing sa bundok ng Makiling. Ang bahay na ito ay binubuo ng 2 palapag. Ang unang palapag ay nagsisilbing tindahan ng nanay ni Jose Rizal noon at ang kalahati nito ay imbakan ng mga inani nila sa bukid gaya ng palay, tubo at marami pang iba. At ang pangalawang palapag, ito yung pinaka tirahan nila. So nandito ang iba't ibang parte ng bahay kagaya ng kaida or multi-purpose room. So, sa makikita natin ang isang malaking library na naglalaman noon ng more than 1,000 volumes of books at meron din pong formal dining area dito. Kapag meron silang special occasions, dito nila ito ginaganap. At ang sumunod na kwarto ay ang kwarto ng mga kapatid na babae. Andito rin yung sala nila, kwarto ng mga lalaki at ang kwarto ng mga magulang. At andito rin po yung kanilang pang-araw-araw na kainan kung saan makikita natin yung isang mesa, mga bangko at isang malaking pamaypay na tinatawag na pangka. Ang pangka ay isang Indian fan or pamaypay na dinala dito noong panahon ng British occupation. Dito rin po yung kusina nila. Makikita natin yung mga ginamit nila sa kusina. Meron dito mga original, meron naman po mga ginaya lang o reproductions. And then makikita po natin ang azotea. Dito po natin naaalala ang Noli Me Tangere sa azotea. Yun po yung itsura ng bahay noon ng nila Jose Rizal. Sa ngayon, ito ay ginawang isang museum or museo. Itinatag ang museo noong 1961 or ika-100 taon ng kapanganakan ni Jose Rizal. Actually, 1951, inano na to, ni-reconstruct. Tapos inaugurate na 1951 in line with the centenary of Rizal's birthday. Kung kaya, ito yung panahon nag-umpisa na pinamalaan ng gobyerno para maging isang formal na museum. Sa ngayon naman, ito ay binubuo ng 6 na galleries. Meron po tayong tinatawag na, yung unang gallery ay Kaliwanagan o Enlightenment. Dito po nagpo-focus doon sa pamilya ni Jose Rizal at yung kanyang kabataan. Makikita nyo po dito yung isang genealogy o yung talaang kanan. Makikita nyo kung sino yung mga ninuno ni Rizal, kung saan sila nagmula. Kay Domingo Lamco, isang Chinese, nanggaling sa mainland China, at isa siyang merchant. Kaya ang apelyido nila ay Mercado. Pero later on, pinalitan na ng Rizal ang apelyido nila dahil pinili ito dun sa talaan na ginawa ni Governor Claveria noong 1849. So, makikita nyo din po sa Gallery 1 yung isang estatwa na mag-inang Jose Rizal na siya ay tinuturuan ng alpabeto o ng katon. Ito po ay meron din pong kagayang maliit or miniature na statue at ito'y para sa mga kapatid nating may kapansanan sa paningin. May braille at meron tactile na pwede nilang hipuin para ma-imagine nila, ma-experience nila yung kung ano yung sinasaad ng exhibit upang yung mga natin, kapatid natin ay magkaroon din ng karanasan mamasyal sa isang museo. Ang gallery 2 naman ay tinatawag na kapaligiran. At ito ang nagpapakita na ang Calamba is agricultural town at ito yung kapaligiran ni Rizal kung saan siya lumaki. At pinapakita dito ang kasaysayan, paano siya naging bayan. Nag-umpisa siya sa bayan ng Tabuco, humiwalay siya dito, gaya ng Binyan, Santa Rosa. At ito'y naging hacienda sa pangangalaga ng mga Dominicanong praile. Tinawag ito noon na Hacienda de San Juan Bautista. At noon ay may mga tao na nagtungo dito upang maging inquilino, kagaya ni Don Francisco Mercado, yung ama ni Dr. Jose Rizal. Nung panahon na yon, si Don Francisco at kanyang kapatid nag-settle dito sa Calamba upang mamahala ng lupain. Dito din niya nakilala si Teodora Alonso at bumuo sila ng pamilya, kung kaya nagkaroon din sila ng bahay na ganito. So noon, pinapakita din kung anong klaseng bayan ang Calamba. Primarily, ito isang agricultural town. At nung panahon na ng pamamahala ni Don Francisco sa kanilang mga lupain dito, nagkaroon ng problema sa lupa, sa pag-upa ng lupa dito sa Calamba. So isa si Don Francisco sa nagreklamo dun sa mga Dominicans sa pagtataas ng renta ng lupa. Ang tawag sa renta ng lupa nun ay canon. So, nagreklamo sila pero hindi sila pinakinggan. Kung kaya, sila ay pinalayas dito sa bayan ng Calamba. Si Don Francisco, Doña Teodora at ilang mga anak ay nagtungo na Maynila. At ang ilan ay doon nagtungo sa Los Baños, Laguna, kagaya ni Pasiano at ilang mga kapatid. Kaya simula noong 1891, wala nang Rizal na nakatira dito sa bahay na ito. Ang pangatlong gallery ay tinatawag na karunungan. Ang focus naman nito, si Rizal at ang kanyang formal schooling sa Ateneo de Municipal de Manila at sa Universidad de Santo Tomas. So, dito makikita din kung paano siya nagkaroon ng unang karunungan. Of course, dun sa kanya nanay, pagkatapos nag-aral siya sa Binyan, Laguna, saka nagtungo sa Ateneo de Municipal de Manila at sa Universidad de Santo Tomas. Ang Gallery 4, ang dinidescribe dito ay bahay na bato. At pinapakita dito ang bahay ni Rizal at ang kanyang mga furnitures, yung mga furnishings na makikita natin doon sa loob. Ang Gallery 5 ay tungkol naman sa unang paglalakbay sa Europa. Ito ay nagpapakita ng unang pagbibiyahe o paglalakbay ni Jose Rizal sa Europe noong 1882 hanggang 1887. Yung kanyang pag-aaral sa Espanya, sa France at sa Germany. At ang kanyang makikita din dito yung kanyang mga sinulat, gaya ng Noli Me Tangere. At sa pang-anim na gallery, tinatawag na pangalawang paglalakbay sa Europa, dinidiscuss naman dito ang paglalakbay niya noong 1888 to 1892. Pinapakita dito ang propaganda activities, pangalawang pagsulat ng isang nobela, ang El Filibusterismo, at ang ibang mga political writings hanggang siya ay bumalik sa Maynila noong 1882. Okay, so yun po ang mga galleries na meron tayo dito sa Museo ni Jose Rizal. Pagkatapos po ng pag-ikot sa museo, ang mga bisita ay maaring umikot sa courtyard or sa garden. Doon makikita natin yung tomb o libingan ng mga magulang ni Jose Rizal. Dito inilibing ang labi nila noong 1997. At makikita din ang isang estatwa ng bata na may kasunod na aso. Sinisimbolo nito ang kabataan ni Jose Rizal. Okay, so yun po ang ating mga mamamala sa Museo ni Jose Rizal, Calamba. Muli ako po si Zarah Escueta, ang Museum Curator ng Museo ni Jose Rizal, Calamba. Nais ko po kayong imbitahan na mamasyal sa museong ito dito sa Laguna at actually bukas na po kami simula sa araw na ito, June 15. At ang nais lang po namin ay sumunod po tayo sa protocol, sa health protocols, magsuot po ng face mask at face shield sa pagpunta rito. At kailangan po 2 araw bago bumisita ay magtatawag kayo sa amin sa numerong 049-834-1599. At pwede rin po kayo mag-email sa museonuserizalcalamba@gmail.com.
Wow, that was a good walk down memory lane. And before we get to talk about fencing, let's listen to another exciting kwento of Commissioner Celia Kiram on fencing history.
Ang aking ibabahaging kwento sa inyo ngayon ay ang nakakawiling kaalaman tungkol sa sport na fencing. Ang sport na ito ay pinaniniwalaang nagugat sa pagbuo ng swordsmanship sa mga duelo at pagtatanggol sa sarili. Alam niyo ba na noong 776 BC, ang fencing ay isinama sa sinaunang palarong Olimpiko. Ito ay katulad sa modernong fencing na ibinibahagi ang konsepto ng crafting na gamit ang espada. Noong 648 BC, ang fencing ay ipinakilala sa mga Romano upang mapabuti ang kanilang kasanayan sa pakikipaglaban. Noong ika-18 siglo, nagsimula ang fencing maging sport. Nangyari ito sa pag-imbento ng foil, isang sandata na may flattened tip, mga proteksyon na wire mesh mask at sistema ng mga patakaran. Alam nyo ba na itinampok ang unang modernong laro ng fencing sa Olimpiko noong 1896 sa Athens, Greece? Ang foil fencing ng kababaihan ay pinakilala sa Summer Olympics noong 1924 na ginanap sa Paris. Samantala naman, ang epi-fencing ay ipinakilala noong 1996 sa Atlanta Olympics. At saber fencing noong 2004 sa Athens, Greece. Ngayon, ang kalalakihan at kababaihan ay parehong nakikipagkompetensya sa lahat ng tatlong sandata sa parehong kaganapan sa individual at koponan. Isang nakakawiling kaalaman na ang ating pambansang bayani na si Dr. Jose Rizal ay nag-aral sa Espanya ng fencing sa sikat na paaralan ng Sala de Armas y Carbonell. Kasama niya sa paglalaro ng fencing sina Nelly Bostad, Juan Luna at Valentin Ventura. Alam niyo ba na si Dr. Jose Rizal ay kilalang master ng foil, saber at dueling sword? Si Din ay nakakuha ng isang maalamat na reputasyon para sa kanyang grace technique sa fencing. Diyan nagwawakas ang kwento tungkol sa sport na fencing. Muli, ito ang inyong Commissioner Kiram na walang sawang maghahatid ng kwentong kababaihan, kwento para sa kaalaman at karunungan sa sport.
Not at your best? You may be dehydrated. You need Pocari Sweat. It replaces the electrolytes you've lost and helps you perform at your best. Be at your best with Pocari Sweat. Pocari Sweat.
Fast forward to today's fencing heroes, we are privileged to have with us Miss Wendy Mendoza to talk about the basics of fencing as a sport.
For our fencing venue, pwede po tayo sa maluluwag na space, like covered court. Basta po, hindi madalas yung sa head. Dapat po may mat. And for the equipment, we have the tools. The tools wire para sa connection po siya sa sensors and the scoring machine para po malaman kung kanino mapupunta yung bata. And now, this is the last weapon, the saber. Saber has also a lame like foil, and the target of saber is from arm and also a head. Ayan, hanggang hips siya. So, front and back, target din po siya. So, also, saber has a plastron, jacket, and the mace. Then, equipment, meron din po siyang body wire. And from the blade naman po, saber is a cutting weapon, which is hampas po yung laro niya. Hindi po katulad ng foil at sa epay, so si saber po hampas.
Thank you very much for that refresher session on basic fencing. I'm sure a lot of girls would love to try such awesome sport. We have also invited the head coach of the Philippine Fencing Association, Ms. Vina Nuestro, to share with us her coaching joys and challenges. Coach Vina, we have several children here with questions that we would love you to answer. Take it away, girls.
Hello, my name is Aliyah Jai K. Hassan. I'm 6 years old and my childhood is it's pandemic, so kids are not allowed to go outside. Luckily, I have a brother named Jomar, so we play around the house and we sleep sometimes. And I really wanted to learn fencing, so that's what I want to do, and my mom and dad are supporting me. About you, what kind of sports you want to learn?
I started fencing 5 years old or 7 years old. And father ko yung nagturo sa akin dito lang sa bahay namin. And inisip namin laro-laro lang. Then parang natuwa na kami, naging seryoso na kami sa paglalaro. Tapos nagseryoso ako mag-fencing mga 12 years old. Tapos yun na, kasi 12 years old, pwede ka nang makilaro ng competition like novice, then junior competition. Kasi pagka mga bata pa lang, mga 5 years old or 7 years old, wala pa that time na mga competition. So, at that time then, wala pa rin kami mga masyadong mga kalaro. So, at the age of 12 yun, nagsimula na kami. Until then, naging national team ako, 1999 or year 2000.
Hello, Coach Vina. I'm Nico from Paranaque. I love doing a lot of things. I can describe without looking at them more than 100 flags. And I love listening to stories of culture. I love playing, but I have no sports that I can learn. Mom was showing me fencing one time, but it is frightening for all of those swords. Oh, how can we learn fencing? Where can we train? And what age can we start learning this sport?
You can start fencing at the age of 5. Kasi normally sa ibang bansa, nag-start sila 3 years old. Kasi 5 years old may competition na. 5 to 7 years old, then 7 to 9 years old. Hindi naman nakakatakot mag-fencing eh. Kasi natatakot lang sila dahil pag nasaktan sila, lalo na doon sa sword na hahawakan nila. Pero from that age, ang hawak nilang sword ngayon is yung, meron kasing mga pambata na 5 years old to 7 years old, yung parang plastic lang. So pag natusok ka nun, lang siya, magbabuzzer lang siya. Tapos may ilaw siya na maliit doon sa pinaka-point ng sword. Then, tas may protective gear ka rin doon na light lang naman siya. Hindi siya yung heavy na katulad ng sinusuot ng ibang mga national team at saka sa mga universities. Tapos may helmet, may mask din, plastic din siya. So, sobrang gaan niya. Hindi mahihirapan yung mga bata na ganong edad.
Hi Coach, this is Jylyn Reyes. So you're the coach of our top players in fencing. Is coaching top players in fencing fun? Is it like a doting mom to her children, or the strict one who at one glance can keep us in silence? How do you play your role as a coach to our national players?
As being an athlete before, natural lang naman yung na strict ang mga coaches eh. So, hindi naman kasing strict ng parents. So, yung coaches kasi kahit papaano, medyo hindi naman masyado nagagalit. Sakto lang. Depende na lang kung halimbawa is may nagawa kang kasalanan or na-late ka sa training, hindi ka nakapagpaalam sa training. Ganun lang yun. Hindi sobrang strict ang mga coaches.
Hi, I am Crystal from Taguban City. Coach Vina, how do you bring out the best in your players?
Siyempre, ang ipapayo rin namin sa mga athletes, like, para ma-boost yung talaga nila is, patataasin mo yung moral nila. So, yung tipong hindi sila mapapanghinaan ng loob or, like, natalo siya, for example, kay ganito. So, sasabihin mo na lang na, next time, mapag-aaralan mo pa naman yan eh. Mapapractice mo pa yan. Sa susunod na makatapat mo siya, ganito na gagawin mo, gagalingan mo na. Sa mga ganun. Huwag mo siyang i-feeling down na, hindi mo kasi ako sinunod eh. Mga ganun. Pangit kasi na, gaganon mo yung player.
Hello, Coach. I'm Gainiz. I am beautiful, loving, and prayerful. How about you, Coach Dina? Can you also describe yourself in 3 words? And please explain each.
Strong person ako. So, kasi as a strong person, marami naman tayong pinagdadaanan na problema before eh. So, syempre, para hindi ka ma-down or kailangan i-boost mo yung pagiging strong person mo, like huwag kang magpapatalo. So, sasabihin ng iba, kesyo galto ka, wag. Kailangan i-lift up mo yung sarili mo na, ay hindi, kailangan ma-push ko to. Kailangan mas mataasan ko pa to na hindi ako magpapatalo sa kanya. Responsible akong tao, lalo na pag mga students na yung mga kaharap ko or syempre, kargado mo yung mga yan eh. Hindi mo sila iiwan na hindi mo sila mapapabayaan. And then yung third is loving. Siyempre, mahal ko rin naman yung mga atleta ko. Siyempre, nakikita nila kung paano ko sila turuan. So, natutuwa sila na nakikita nila na mahal ko yung mga bata.
Hi, I'm Justin Chloe from Paranaque. I am sure as a coach and mom, you have a lot of unforgettable moments to share with us. Coach, what makes fencing same with life?
Unforgettable moments ko is ginagawa ko para hindi malungkot yung anak ko, lalo na kung iiwan ko siya sa bahay, is sinasama ko na lang siya. Kasi mahirap pagka iniiwan mo, umiiyak yung bata So, yun yung mga unforgettable moments ko na para nakikita niyo yung work mo. Nakikita niya, nagtuturo ako ng fencing, natutuwa siya. So, pag nandun kami sa fencing, nakikihalubilo rin siya sa mga national team or doon sa school ko, sa mga bata. So, nakikisali rin siya sa warm-up. So, para na rin kami nagbabanding ng anak ko. Ganun. Pag uwi ng bahay, parang normal na lang din. Kasi pag uwi ng bahay, yung anak mo magsasabi rin siya, Mama, fencing ako. Parang natural na lang na parang gusto na rin talaga, parang iniisip niya paglaki niya gusto rin daw niya mag-fencing. So, kahit pa paano, natuturuan mo na siya paunti-unti dito sa bahay. So, normal na lang yung pupunta sa fencing, tapos pagbalik ng bahay, fencing. So, syempre, hindi mawawala yung tuturuan mo siya sa pag-aaral din niya. Hindi mawawala yun. Kailangan importante na mag-aral din siya.
Hi, Coach Dina. This is Natasha from Taguig City. What else do you dream to do and achieve as coach?
Magkaroon kami ng student na national athlete na makakarating sa Olympics. Yun lang naman yung mga dream lahat ng coach siguro. Masaya na kami, lalo na kung mga simpleng competitions lang na na-achieve ng mga bata kahit hindi sila maka-gold. Parang proud na sila na maka-bronze. Sobrang tuwang-tuwa na sila. Nakakatuwa yung mga bata pag nananalo ng mga bronze medal. So parang happy na kami na kahit papaano nakatungtong sila sa ganun. Maraming salamat po at sana po ay suportahan po natin ang mga atleta Pilipino sa darating na SEA Games at saka sa parating na Olympics po. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much to these young, intelligent girls. We hope that Coach Vina answered your questions well. Thank you, Coach. Now, it is very interesting to listen to 2 of our best women fencers, Miss Samantha Catantan and Miss Jylyn Nicanor, as they share their journey as an athlete.
19-year-old Samantha is currently training in the U.S. She keeps a record as Penn State University's most valuable player. She also won 4 straight UAAP Juniors MVP seasons 78 to 81 in the girls division and multiple gold medals with the Red Warriors team. She became the first Filipino to win gold medal in the Asian Under-23 Fencing Championship in 2019. She also posted a top 16 finish out of 112 fencers in the World Junior and Cadet Fencing Championship in Poland, the highest the Filipino ever achieved in the tournament's history.
Start ako mag-fencing way back 2011. 9 years old ako noon. And after like a month, nag-competition ako. First competition ko. After nun, nakapasok na ako ng UE varsity as a varsity player. After 2 years, grade 8 ako, nagsastart na ako sumali sa mga national opens. Tapos, ayun, nagta-top 4 ako. Kaya, ayun, nakapasok ako ng national team. I think 15 years old ako. And ayan, yun din yung first SEA Games ko. Yung year na yun na nakapasok ako ng national team. And yung most unforgettable competition ko is yung first competition ko nung 9 years old ako. Kasi, syempre, parang never ako sumali sa sports. So, fencing talaga yung first sports ko. And yun yung first competition ko. And grabe yung kaba. And kahit naka-bronze lang ako, parang yun yung dahilan kung bakit nandito ako ngayon. Kasi feel ko kung nag-gold ako, parang hindi ako mas ma-motivate na mag-training pa kasi gusto ko makakuha ng gold. Kasi nakakuha na ako ng gold. So, thankful ako na nakakuha ako ng bronze ng first competition ko. Actually, madami akong unforgettable na competition pero isa din doon yung first SEA Games ko kasi I was 15 years old back then and hindi ko expected na makapaglaro ako ng SEA Games and I was not planning to join SEA Games back then kasi feel ko sobrang bata ko pa and all. And victories, yun nga, kahit hindi ako nag-gold, nag-silver ako, pero first competition, first SEA Games ko naman yun, kaya sobrang overwhelming. And next is, of course, yung nandito na ako, yung nag-top 16 ako sa world noong 2019, and yung nag-number 1 ako sa Asian Under 23 noong 2019 din, and yung last 2 competition na hindi ko talaga makakalimutan is, yung nandito na ako sa US, nakapasok ako sa top 4 ng NCAA and I went undefeated po sa first round. Tapos, nung nag-second naman ako sa North American Cup Division 1 po dito sa US, which is senior team po nila. So, sobrang thankful talaga ako na nakapasok ako doon. Yung most unforgettable defeat ko siguro or failure, nung bata ako, may isa, hindi ko na i-mention yung pangalan, pero may isang girl na 15-0 ako. Tapos, ayun, parang nightmare, parang gusto ko na mag-stop mag-fencing, pero at the same time, mas na trigger ako na mag-training pa para mas gumaling pa kasi next time, ayoko na 15-0. What do I do now other than fencing? Syempre po yung pag-aaral ko kasi nandito na ako sa US, so gusto ko talaga na mas nafe-feel ko na mas greater future ahead for me and gusto ko na pag-iihan talagang mabuti para if I have a chance to syempre para makapagtrabaho dito, why not? Kung yun talaga yung plan sa akin ni Lord. And I think yung fencing, sobrang malaking factor talaga siya kung sino ako ngayon. Kasi, hindi lang as a person, parang yung buong buhay ko talaga binago niya. Kasi nung bata ako, kami ng family ko hindi namin afford na makapag-aral sa private school. And yung fencing, nag-open ng opportunity sa akin and sa mga kapatid ko na makapag-aral sa magagandang university. Ako, nakapasok ako ng UE. Tapos yung kapatid ko naman, nakapasok siya ng UST as a varsity player din and may scholarship din. So, sobrang laking tulong sa parents ko. So, yung fencing, natutunan ko to keep yourself on the ground despite of all the achievements, despite of all the blessings that I had before and that I'm getting right now. Natutunan ko na maging thankful even sa maliliit na bagay kasi from nothing to something ako So, parang lahat pinagdaanan ko. Siguro yung payo ko lang talaga is be patient enough kasi nga syempre with the COVID situation, with the pandemic, hindi natin sure kung kailan magiging normal yung lahat. So, let's use this time to improve ourselves and mag-training pang maigi and ayun, parang kaya natin talagang palakasin yung fencing community sa Philippines by helping ourselves first, of course. Kasi syempre, kapag ini-improve natin yung sarili natin, makakatulong tayo sa ibang fencers na gumaling din sila, ganun. And, ayun, give and take lang ng skills and talent. So, yun po. Thank you.
A multi-medalist in international fencing competitions since 2011, and a consistent first placer in the local competitions since 2010, Jylyn Nicanor, a gold and bronze medalist in the 30th Southeast Asian Games.
Nag-start po ako maglaro ng fencing nung third year high school, bakasyon po noon. Tapos po, may program po si Counselor Secretary ko noon, parang sa mga sports project. Tapos po, isa po sa membro ng mga tauhan niya, yung tita ko. So, isa po siya sa nagpapatakbo nun sa fencing. Nag-try out na din ako kasi parang wala namang mawawala sa akin. Tapos magkaka-scholarship pa ako. Hanggang sa sunod-sunod na training po, nagustuhan ko na yung paglalaro ng fencing. Hanggang sa doon na po kami nakuha ng UE, like nakuha po kami ni Coach Anak para maglaro sa University of the East para maging varsity. Ayun, tuloy-tuloy na po yung paglalaro ko sa UA80, naging Rookie of the Year po ako. 2010 po, saka ako napasok na member ng Philippine National Team. 2019, ito po yung kakatapos lang na SEA Games ng 2019 na ginanap ko dito sa Manila. Yun, first time ko po manalo ng gold. Sobrang saya ko po nung time na yun kasi po parang di pa ako makapaniwala na makaka-gold nga ako kasi po parang sobrang underdog po yung Philippines noon parang never pa kami nanalo ng gold, ganun. Pero, pre-novidan po kami ng PSC na Korean coach nung bago pa mag-start yung taon parang January 2019. Tapos po, simula po noon hanggang sa mag-SEA Games, bago mag-SEA Games, nagpe-training po kami under Coach Kim and Coach Park. Sobrang kakaiba po yung pagpe-training nila kasi po, ina-apply po nila yung Korean style na pagtuturo. Hindi naman po kami sanay sa ganun. Tsaka mas updated po yung mga turo nila, ganun. Ayun nga po, nanalo naman po kami dahil din sa mga pagtuturo nila. So, feeling ko po, effective talaga sila bilang coaches. Tsaka, sobrang saya po talaga namin kasi sobrang positive yung naging outcome ng lahat ng paghihirap namin. Other than fencing, wala naman po akong ginagawa masyado kasi po parang nagpo-focus pa din po ako sa pagpe-training, sa pagpe-fencing. Marami pa po akong pinaghahandaan tulad po ng mga Asian Games, tapos katulad nga po ng itong susunod na SEA Games sa Vietnam po, parang gusto ko po kasi maglaro hindi pa po ako magre-retiro. Ayun po, so full-time athlete po ako ngayon. Iba po talaga yung feeling na nabibigay niya sa akin pag naglalaro po ako, pag nare-represent ko po yung Philippines sa mga international competition. Iba po talaga yung feeling. Lalo na po pag nananalo ko. Sobrang saya po talaga. Tsaka iba din po talaga yung disiplina na makukuha niyo pag once na naglaro ka na ng fencing. Kasi po, parang kailangan mo talaga siya kailangan meron kang disiplina. Lalo na pag national team ka, syempre po kasi pag sa training, dapat hindi ka sumusuko agad, hindi ka napapagod sa pagka-training. Hindi ka mawawalan ng interest kasi mahal mo yung ginagawa mo. Ganun po. Lifestyle po, iba na po siya kasi nakakapunta-punta po sa ibang bansa. Gamit nga po ng pag-supporta ng PSC pag po pinag-compete kami sa ibang bansa, sinusuportahan po talaga nila kami. Tips ko po sa fencing public na pag nag-start po kayo, alam ko po sa una mahihirapan kayo kasi doon din naman po ako nag-umpisa. Pero po, pag tinuloy-tuloy niyo yan at ma-feel niyo talaga na nai-enjoy niyo yung paglalaro, hindi na po kayo makakaalis kasi po sobrang nakaka-addict talaga siya. Hindi na po natin susukuan ng paglalaro. Ayun lang po.
Now let's move on to what really is setting boundaries in life. Others say that this is an important part of establishing one's identity. as it is an essential part of mental health and well-being. To enlighten us on this, we have with us a life coach of Haraya Coaching.
Our topic for today, I've been invited to talk to you about setting work boundaries. But first, let me introduce who I am. I am from Haraya Coaching. Our company's vision in Haraya is that we see a world where every Filipino has a kaharaya and everyone can be there imaginable. So how do we do this? How do we help you imagine what you can be? We do this via conversations, and the conversation is done in the form of coaching. So we are a company, we provide corporate coaching programs. We also do one-on-one coaching with coaches like myself, and we design coach development programs for coaches or for people who want to be coaches as well. Now, me personally, I have been on the experience. My experience is for about 30 years in the corporate world in a multinational company, and more than half of that is really around human resources, particularly in organization development and learning and development. But in the last 8 years, I think, I have been devoting myself to this role of a coach and a mentor. And I am actually now a life coach, an executive coach, an action learning coach, and very recently, especially during this pandemic and even before the pandemic, I have been into wellness coaching, particularly for emotional, mental health, and psychological health. All right, so that's who I am. And I am interested in this topic, or really very, very happy to share this topic, because it has been one of my key factors for having achieved a successful sort of career, also a happy and fulfilling life. And that's what I call being able to set boundaries at work. Let's first consult the dictionary. Now, let's be technical about this. When we say boundary, what comes to mind is that it is a line, di ba? It marks the limits. Tulad ng boundary between Bulacan, kunwari, and Pampanga, may delineation, may linya, may limitation, may sarili area or border. Some of the similar words would be border, frontier, dividing line, and partition. But I'd like to focus your attention to the word frontier, because both the borders or dividing line or partitions all pertain to limits. Frontier, on the other hand, pertains to an area, a work, a jurisdiction, which if I would like to translate it to as an opportunity. The new frontiers, diba? When we say we want to cover new frontiers, it's actually presenting us not limits, but opportunities to cover new area, new ground. And therefore, that's what I want to focus on. When we talk about boundaries, please consider that it is not only about limitations, but these are enablers para mas lalo tayong maging productive, happy, and fulfilled. So the real need to set boundaries, because they will enable us to achieve these three things. How do I do it? What are the parameters to set your boundaries? So I'd like to talk about three things. There are many tips for how to set your boundaries, pero siguro at this point, I just want to consider tatlong importante. And if you're able to do this, you're on your way to really making your life more fulfilling and more productive. So what are those three not so simple, but yet so important things? First, you have to assess ano bang boundaries ang ilalagay mo, and you have to anchor it on a personal value. So that means my boundary may be different from yours. What works for me may be not working for you. Kaya every one of us will have probably sometimes similar, but also quite unique boundaries for each of us. What determines this is what is important for us, or what we personally value. So some of the questions you can ask yourself as you try to set up your boundary is, what are your priorities? Ano ba ang importante sa akin? What does truly matter for me today? And what determines the priorities would be your role, di ba? Yung status mo. So if I think of myself like last year or late last year in October, my priorities were quite different, because what happened to me late last year in October, the last quarter, I became a grandmother. So medyo nag-iba yung priorities ko. Now that I'm a lola and the grandson is actually living with me, it's important for me to take care of this bagong child also with us in the family, the new addition to the family. So some of my priorities have to, be set aside so that this child also takes one of that priority in my life. And I am so happy with my Lola life. Okay. Now, what do I choose to do and not to do? Now, when I got invited to this talk today, these are the things I choose to do. I really love being able to talk about things that can help because I'm a learning and development practitioner as well. And I get into this practice because I not only develop myself, but in so doing, I help develop others. So may fulfillment for me in that sense. And I choose to do a lot of recently more coaching sessions. I used to do a lot of projects even for the government as a consultant and even now, that are about mga big tasks like organization development, restructuring, or mergers and acquisitions, change management. And don't get me wrong, I still love to do that. I still do it. But I choose to do some of them or prioritize more yung coaching. So between a job that calls for a coach and a job that calls for a consultant, priority goes to a coach, especially coaching people who are suffering from mental and emotional distress. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm what we call a first aid coach. No, that's what I do. Pag meron na talagang scenario that really needs a psychiatrist or psychologist, then I refer them to that. But going back to what I'm saying, I'm choosing to do more coaching sessions because it allows me to help people to help themselves solve their problems on their own capacity. So what do I choose not to do? I don't do other things that I used to do, like I said, yung mga report writing. I don't do that so much nowadays, no, except when real emergencies call for it. Otherwise, this is the kind of job I do, speaking, because also in speaking, I think I'm able to multiply my influence, to be able to help others. Because sometimes, like in one airline, I talked about wellness and meditation, and in one of the associations, it's medical practitioner, but not really your medical sort of people medical practice. I talked about 2,000 people also on self-care. And how do you care for yourselves during the times of stress? So these are things that I choose to do. And when I start my day, so this is so important. There's a limit to what we can do. Ambitious. I used to be very ambitious. I want to do and accomplish a lot of things. But over the years, I learned that really quality is much more important and the impact of what we do. So the night before, like last night before I came to this day, I really already am thinking about what are my top 3 tomorrow? How does my day look like? Top 3, maximum 5. And that includes not just work, but also part of it would be some of the things that I do in my personal life. So in the top 3 to 5 already, is a combination of that. And I'm not a fan of multitasking. I used to do that when I was younger. I think that I could multitask, but I think it's a myth as my experience. And why? Because really the mind can work better if you're so focused on doing one thing at a time with quality. So top 3 to 5 in a day. And you think about that the night before, para hindi ka nagka-grounding. Pagdating mo, hindi mo alam kung anong gagawin mo. At your desk, you don't know what you're going to do. You have to be able to think about that the night before. And lastly, I always think about this. My boundaries are, I do things that I enjoy most and gives me fulfillment. So that's one of the criteria. I don't know what works for you, but these are some of the questions I ask myself when I'm working on putting up my boundaries. And I hope that works for you as well. Second thing. Tayong mga Filipino, so even if we have already to ourselves decided on some of our boundaries, parang ang hirap nating i-communicate ito clearly and timely. Kasi nasa sa atin yung mapagbigay, nahihiya, di ba? Nakikisama, sige na lang, okay na lang, magtsatsaga, magpapasensya, kahit na nakakross yung boundaries. But really what I've learned from working cross-culturally, what I say, it is important for us to be very clear, and so much more even in our own culture as a Filipino. Kasi we have to be direct and simple in what we want, in stating what works for us. For example, when someone calls for a meeting for me, to me on a Saturday or a Sunday, before, sobrang career-oriented ako, sige, patol, I'll do that. But nowadays, I really say, and I'm very direct when I say, I don't do meetings over the weekends anymore. So if you want my help, let's try and meet between Monday to Friday. And even, as simple as putting that on the email, for example, iba may mga email signatures, you can write there, after your name and say, I'm available to respond to you between 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. If that works for you, you can put it there. So be direct and simple. Kesa yung pakikiramdaman or you allow the person to just guess. People are not mind readers. And you get into trouble and a lot of misconceptions, misinterpretations, and misjudgments if you don't really say it directly, what works and what is important for you. And secondly, when your boundary is crossed or stepped over, tayong mga Pilipino, sige na lang, okay lang yan, palagpasin na lang, one time lang naman. Paano kung sa second time, third time, and you let things slide? What happens is, di ba nagpa-pile up? And what happens when it piles up? Don't know about you, pero ako, usually I'm so patient, but when things pile up, I can become a Mount Pinatubo. I'm really a sleeping volcano, and people get then surprised at natataranta, saan nanggaling yun? Bakit nagwala, diba? And so therefore, it becomes a source of frustrations or misunderstandings around us. So if your boundary has been crossed or stepped over, do it politely and say, kanina, I felt like this, I got a little bit frustrated because you gave me something that I did not ask for. Yung ganon. So it's really about recognizing how you feel and respecting that feeling and allowing the people to understand how you're feeling. It is not about being selfish when you do this. It is about really caring for yourself and for others. Kasi nga, ayaw mong maging Hulk, right? All right. Not enough said, I think, about that. Third, and very important, equally important, like for me, kasi I used to be a people pleaser and it was difficult for me to learn to say no before. But nowadays, I really have to say no, and I say it without feeling guilty. The reason being, I have to say no to something that I do not want to do or do not want to accept, even if it's good or it was done and presented in a very polite way. I say politely also no and not feel guilty because my intention is very clear. I don't want to overpromise and I don't want to overcommit. So if I can't do anything or if I cannot do something, I'd really rather say, thank you for thinking of me, including me. Like yesterday lang, there was a project and this friend wanted me to be in that project and it will pay well. But then I thought it might also, affect her reputation because I won't be able to attend to it since I already am full. And no matter how much I want to help her in that project, it might cost her only difficulties because I won't be able to attend the meetings and all of that. So I kindly said no and said why. And I always remember this. When you say yes to something, you are saying no to another and vice versa. What do we mean by this? Because we only have a very, time. Time is a resource here. And when it's full, when my time is full, and then something else comes in, that means if I accept that and I say yes to that, I'll have to say no to something else. I won't be doing something right. And what if it's important also, those other things that I already said yes to? So it's important for us to honor our commitment prior, especially. And if you're a leader naman, or people leader, or you're part of a team, maybe you can delegate some of those work that you find has been given to you and say that it's an opportunity for others also to do and get improved on, if you can. This is one option also. And never be shy or afraid to ask for help. When you do need to ask and say, I really cannot do that because I don't know how to do this, so don't be afraid to ask for help. Your boundary No one else does that for you. No one else makes that choice but yourself. So my boundary is my choice. And when it's clear to me the reasons for my boundaries, I can really adhere to it, right? Kapag alam mo yung why of doing things, you will be able to consistently do it. Now your life, our life matters. My life matters. So I choose and uphold my boundaries. No matter what, I continue to in the face of that, mga challenges, I will always try to uphold it because it is upholding also my personal values. And my boundaries, I don't think of that as limitations. My boundaries are enablers for me to live a productive, happy, and fulfilling life. So I hope that this has helped you also find a way to set your own boundaries if you haven't yet. And if you have already set them up, that you would be able to continue to uphold them and continue to live a productive, happy, and fulfilling life as well. Thank you.
And that's it. Time is up for this week's Rise Up, Shape Up episode. Rise Up, Shape Up is a public service show brought to you by the Philippine Sports Commission, Women in Sports. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels. We are still accepting entries for Zoom Barangay Filipina Solo Exercise on Camp Challenge. Send your entries and win cash prizes. Again, this is your host, Jay Karamos. Have a marvelous day, everyone.
Rise up and shake.